Commander Worf lectures Julian and Miles about Davy Crockett. General Martok spent 5 years as a civilian laborer aboard General Shevang's flagship, and Bloodwine still makes Ezri Dax gag. She much prefers Moscow mules. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We have an extremely special guest today. You know him as General Martok. We know him as, well, General Martok, because he won't have it any other way. It's J.G. Hertzler.
Yes.
Kapla!
This is the only way you'll ever get to see me again. Since I will never be joining you in Vegas.
Oh,
We'll
man.
see about that. We'll see about that. My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 7, Episode 7, Once More Unto the Breach, written by legendary sci-fi writer Ronald D. Moore, directed by Alan Craker. This was November 11th, 1998. Where were you? How you guys doing?
11/11. Wow.
Yeah.
11/11. I was
Lucky
thinking the
day.
same thing, 11/11.
Yeah, and you're in a casino. Yo, 11. Winner, winner.
Good sign.
Exactly. I like the outfit. As usual, you've got more style than the average person on full display.
Wow.
JG.
Man, it's the man on my chest. Yeah, baby. Those were the-
Everybody listening in on the audio podcast, JG has on a sleeveless to show off the guns, Suns Out, Guns Out Spock shirt, and it looks glorious.
ain't the gun show it once was, man. I tell you, as after 3 years of sitting, waiting for the epidemic to be over, the pandemic, doing nothing because everything was closed. And, I used to worship my own guns. Now I look at them and cry. Will I cry just a little because I had to go away?
Now you got the nice straw Crocodile Dundee straw hat, ready to go.
Well, it's not the Mr. Croc Dundee, although I adored him. People who they may not know, the youngsters may not know Crocodile Dundee, and all they have is
Paul Hogan? Paul Hogan, I
No.
think, played him, right?
Oh no, wasn't it Crocodile
No.
Dundee played by the Aussie actor? You call that a knife? That's not a knife. It is a knife.
I thought that was Paul Hogan. The character's name was Mick.
Oh,
I
Paul
think.
Hogan.
Yeah.
Was it Paul Hogan?
I was thinking of Hulk Hogan. I believe it was Paul Hogan.
Hulk Hogan would be a great crocodile Dundee or a croc hunter.
In fact, my guns used to be so big. I was sitting in a restaurant in Montrose. You know where Montrose is there above Glendale a little bit? Anyway,
Okay.
Sitting there in the outdoor cafe, and the people would come up and say, "Wait a minute, are you Hulk Hogan?" Because I had this mustache coming down, and a skull cap, and it's like anyway, those were the days. Now it's like, are you Walter Brennan?
Well, you know something,
Nobody's
brother,
doing that.
is how you would respond.
Yeah, you can do a mean Hulk Hogan, especially with that facial hair that you've got going.
Oh wow,
You can pull it off.
I would not be able to survive one toss across the onto and body slammed by anybody.
But
Maybe
your
body slam-
opponent would also not be able to survive one slam from General Martok.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, the General Martok he'd have to have some major uppers to pick anybody up. If it was anybody Ezri Dax, anybody larger than that. would be a problem.
Ezri, though, she can get it. Though. Everybody else.
Oh, she could bring it. You're right. You're right. Not to think of it.
As I'm watching this episode, this is actually, we haven't really gotten to the episode, but this particular episode is my favorite Klingon episode that I've watched so far on the series. And we've had some good one, Way of the Warrior, and all of these other episodes. Yeah. But I enjoyed this one the most. And I think that this is the perfect embodiment of a Klingon episode, telling about the Klingon culture, about the nuances in between interactions between other Klingons.
I was reading in the, I think it was in the companion that Terry Erdman wrote most of the additional dialogue and whatnot in the companion, all the stories of each episode. Terry Erdman is a wonderful writer. And he wrote about it, that he told the story that Ron Moore, who is, got to be one of my 5 best writers in anything in the world. He's an incredible mind, great mind, and to have that with being such a wonderful person as well. Like I have the guns and the mind, but I'm not a good person. Just anybody out there.
That's what you try to pretend. That's what you try to project. But
we know better. Yeah,
you're a nice guy. We all know.
But he wrote that Ron Moore really wanted to write, when he was given the assignment, he really wanted to write this enormous mythical Klingon story that involved so much more than just Kor getting on that ship. It was as if it was the pilot episode of a Klingon saga that would go on for 2 years. That's how. And when he turned in his, as he said, he turned in his story outline. Ira said, "This is an encyclopedia. This is a book. This is like a 6-part book." He says, "Yeah, I know. Let's do that." He said, "No, we can't do that." And the major reason they felt it would be tough to do at that point was that it was late in the season, and everybody on the set was exhausted, and for the crew to be able to adjust from set to set to set to studio to studio to studio, it was just asking too much. I mean, these guys, they worked 5 hours before we'd get there, and they'd be there 5 hours after we left. So they didn't do it, but he did. He pared it down to what I think is it's my favorite episode in the that I ever did.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow! So then you have the same kind of feelings for that episode that I do, because when as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, have I seen a better Klingon episode than this? And I don't think so. I think this is the best Klingon episode. I think you show a lot of different sides of what we expect out of the Klingon personality, the really toughness, but the respect, just the different ways that you play it, the ribbing that you do. I really love your performance in this episode, JG. I thought actually in line with me being this, it being my favorite Klingon episode, I realized as well, and this, some people may be upset about it, but you're actually my favorite Klingon in Star Trek.
Funny, mine too.
What a coincidence.
So we agree on that.
We are in total agreement on that. Yeah. Actually, no, there's one more Klingon that I think, if I could aspire, and that's Richard Hatch. Richard Hatch as Karn in Axanar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a fan film, quote unquote, but Richard Hatch is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I said, Karn was extraordinary, but yeah, because besides me, what do you have? You have Galrod, please. And
no, you have. I mean,
hey, wait a second.
No, we love O'Reilly.
Yeah.
You have Worf. Obviously, Worf is the most famous of Klingons, but the thing about Worf is that I get more of him being a human.
Yeah.
Or like a humanist, like more human characteristic and traits than Klingon. I feel like he's trying to fit in and give up some of his Klingon stuff in order to, fit in with the Federation kind of standard of hierarchy. But you kind
Klingons.
of, right. But you embody
by humans.
Martok to me embodies everything I envision to be when it comes to a Klingon, like a true-blooded, old school Klingon. And I think you really showed that in this episode very well.
Well, thank you, Cirroc. I'm humbled, but I need you to go to every newspaper and magazine that's ever writing a story about you or anybody and make it a story about me.
I will do that.
I'd really appreciate that if you could do that.
That's a lot of newspapers that talk about Cirroc, though. That's going to be a lot of work.
I know. I know.
No, you stand alone, and I really loved the range in this particular episode. I think you mentioned Ron Moore. Ron Moore really dealt with a lot of the subtle nuances in the language and also the arc of your character in this episode, going from somebody who doesn't really respect or appreciate the legacy of this Klingon to really admiring and respecting him and kind of toasting one to his greatness. I think that was one of the best arcs in an episode, and
it was a great
arc. I enjoyed it.
Fought that arc. Let me see. It's after the wedding. I'm gonna read you one of the things that, if I can find it. But I think there were no non-Klingon characters in that episode. Were there?
In that storyline, there was a B plot that Jake Sisko dominated that B plot, of course.
Yeah,
but predominantly it was just that Klingon plot line, and it was all Klingons throughout that entire thing. There were no, we need a human perspective on this or anything like that, which they usually need. In this case, they said, no, these Klingons can carry this, all of them.
I'm finding pictures instead of this is wonderful of what Far Beyond the Stars. Incredibly great episode, of Avery. And in fact, I won't look for it. It's boring to look for stuff.
Well, I could read you an excerpt from the companion that you may have been looking for. This was
looking for, yeah.
Yeah, this was sent in by our associate producer, Eve England. And she says, I'm not going to try to do her accent because I wouldn't do it justice, although I really want to. She says, the companion states that in this episode, they made it clear that Martok was a commoner who worked his way up to leadership, whereas Kor was aristocratic and given privileges throughout his military career. This gave the episode natural tension. JG mentions in the companion that he took a lot from his own background in his portrayal of Martok and how this storyline really worked well with how he'd previously played it. In essence, the companion explains how JG's dad was a mechanic in the Air Force, but rose to become a colonel, and his home life was very work-oriented, mirroring how JG saw Martok's own life. I thought this was interesting. JG also mentions in the companion that he loved this episode because he could be far more venomous and angrier than we usually see him.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
I refuse. That is perfect because that's exactly what was going on. And she got the very crux, the very heart of what was driving me in that episode. And my father was very important. I didn't think about that before. My dad, he enlisted as an enlisted man in 1940 and didn't have a college education, barely finished high school. And he actually, my mother, on the other hand, had a master's degree not long after they got married. But no, she had it before they got married. Had a master's degree. He didn't have a college education, and she ended up becoming. She was the head of USAFE, United States Air Force Education System. It's called the USAFE, but we lived in Morocco. And my mother was the head of the organization in Morocco, in North Africa.
Where in Morocco were you?
Outside of Casablanca. And
that's where my mom grew up around the same time.
Is that right?
Yeah, Casablanca. It was from 48 to 65, I'd say.
You're talking about Air Force or Army or something like that?
Her father was in the French military, yeah.
Oh, the French! Oh,
Oh yeah.
The French and the Moroccans. When I was there, the French and Moroccans were fighting with machine guns right across the little. My dad called it Rue de Rut because it was just a dirt road that we lived in, this palatial-like place. But I don't know how they. Anyway, but the French were. The Moroccans were fighting for their independence from France.
Right.
In 1955 and 56. And that's when we were there. But my mother ended up teaching my father to help him earn his baccalaureate from the University of Maryland, which is the university that covers all the USAFI education. At least it did back in the day. They still, you see advertising on television for University of Maryland around the world. I don't know why it is U of M, but anyway, about this episode, it was very important to me because in the writing, Ron Moore had written the line. Unfortunately, my father. No, I wrote this line. I wanted to add a line at the end of a long speech. And I called up Ron. I said, can I add this line? And the line was, it pertained to exactly what you were talking about. Kor denied my father, Erthog, Martok's father, the only dream he had for his son was to allow his son, was to get his son to be able to accept it into the officers candidate program for the Klingon Defense Force.
Yeah.
And because I was not of noble birth, they wouldn't let me in because of Kor.
Yeah.
Kor is the one who kept saying no.
Yes.
So I added one line and I called, Cirroc, you can't, in that show, people always talk about Next Generation and whatnot being a hoot. Everything was, people were goofing and it was fun.
Yeah.
Our show was serious. And you couldn't change a witch for a that or a that for a witch without getting approval.
Yes.
Anyway, so I called Ron from that little phone in the studio, which felt very Hollywood. Hello, Ron. JG. I want to add a line, and my line that I wanted to add was, unfortunately, because I did many, Martok did many courageous acts that got him a field promotion to
commission, yeah.
And I said, Ron, I'd like to add a line that says, unfortunately, my father did not live to see that day.
Yes, that was brilliant. That you added that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said, JG, of course, because it brought it all, that speech brought it the whole circle. It was completed at that thing. And that's what he was writing about. And he said, fine, that's great. And in my case, the reason it meant a lot to me was that my father didn't live to see any of my work in theater, film, or TV. He just, when we were talking in high school, he said, well, I know some people at Northrop Grumman, if you want to interested in, aerospace, or I said, no, Dad, I want to be an actor. He said, there's a bunch of kooks in that business, John. I said, yeah, I'm one of them, Dad. What can I say? God, it brings a tear to my face right now. But that's why it meant so much to me, because it was borrowed. That line was borrowed from my world as John, and it also fits so beautifully. And
so your father never got to see you
do anything.
Perform
he
anything.
Died before I got really.
Yeah.
See, 70. 73. I worked at the Folger in little tiny roles, Shakespeare, in 73 and 4. But he died in 76 and he was 100% disabled and really in bed before that. So anyway, what was I going to say? Something about, I said, no, I don't want to forgive Core. Core did this to me and my family and my father. I won't forgive him. But this is when everybody sings the song. I said, not me. I'm not going to be singing that song to Core. The Warriors anthem. And they said, well, okay, but we want people, they literally said, we want people to like Martok. Said too late.
You mentioned Shakespeare, and as I was watching this episode, Shakespeare kind of pops out to you, especially during those scenes when you give your monologue about your father. And about being denied on this, officer request, and also Core's speech about when you said, you're making fun of him, and you're like, hey, why don't we go to Caleb 4 and check out what's going on?
So funny.
And you're really ragging him, and he just stays silent,
right?
And he starts to walk out of the door,
right?
And there's a last moment like where you're like, hey, you got anything to say? And he says, yes, I hope that your life, the youth, you enjoy the fruits of your life and all this stuff. It was like, it sounded like Shakespeare to me. Ryan, I didn't the line down, but it sounded like Shakespeare to me.
It was a great line. I can't remember it either. People don't know this. It's like people don't know. We do because we work with him, but generally the general public doesn't really know who René Auberjonois was. He is recognized as the best commedia, stylized actor in theater history in America. He was the best. Physical comedy that was unbelievable, and on top of it, he could do everything else. But he was recognized in the theater world as the greatest commedia dell'arte actor that we have.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And what was I going to say? Something about, also, he was a wonderful artist. We both went to American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, but at different times. He was there before me. And Armin Shimmerman was there too. And I think the same time René was there. But René did woodcuts of a lot of Shakespeare's actors, maybe all the major characters. Woodcuttings that were about that big.
Wow, really? Yeah.
And I walked into the office one day and I saw these on the wall and I said, oh, those are beautiful. Where did you get those? To the administrative secretary, and she said, "Oh, René Auberjonois did them." I said, "Really?" Not only a brilliant commedia dell'arte, a brilliant television actor, a butler of the most extreme means, wonderful, with Danny Davis, and anyway, Danny Davis was another Shakespearean actor from ACT. But I said, is there any way to I never talked to René about them. God, I should have. I really would have liked to have had some of those, or at least one of those.
Wow.
I have no idea.
Maybe Judith still has them. Maybe his wife might still have some. Hey, we do have to jump to our break very quickly. I do want to point out, I don't have it exact, but I did write down Core's line. He says, "Savor the fruit of life, my young friends. It has a sweet taste from the vine, but don't live too long. The taste turns bitter after time." And woo, doesn't that get you?
I don't know where it's from, but John Colicos played Petruchio in Taming the Shrew, opposite Katharine Hepburn on Broadway.
Wow.
That's who John Colicos is.
Well, let's definitely talk about Mr. Colicos because he was amazing in this, and we do have questions about him, and I'm sure you could tell us stories. We're going to take a super quick break, everybody. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc, Lofton, and of course,
hello,
J.G. Hertzler, General/Chancellor Martok. Very quickly, let's knock out these trivioids for the week. We've got Slash, the great guitarist. We've got Santa Anna didn't care about the rules of war. Worf lectures Julian and Miles about Davy Crockett. Worf and Kor toast to absent comrades. Darok's services will no longer be required. Kor's family descends from the imperial court itself. General Martok spent 5 years as a civilian laborer aboard General Shivang's flagship. And blood wine still makes Esri gag. She much prefers Moscow mules, but who doesn't? Well, present company excluded. So JG, you're going to tell us a bit about John Colicos. Actually, another one of our associate producers, Carrie Schwent, did actually email us and ask us directly if you had any good stories about him or thoughts about John Colicos.
But the only reason I knew that, I said before the break, I said that John was Canadian, and he was at Stratford. I'm pretty sure this is where it was, Stratford in Canada. But he, like most of us who do not live or grow up in Hollywood with family members deeply embedded in the business, we do community theater, and then we do educational theater, and then some more community theater. And then I've always said, if you look at an actor's, like myself, an actor's career at over 50 years, I would have to say I have averaged about 20 cents an hour. Is my pay. It's not about money, folks. It's about entertaining people with glorious words, and the better the words, the better the performance. Writers are, that's why I have such admiration for his name just went out of my head, Ron Moore. Not only was he a genius, but is a wonderful person, and his desire to build the reality of Klingon world was, it wasn't just a cheap, throw on a mask and get out there and be. He was very much. It was important to him to build the mythology and everything else that underlaid everything that a Klingon was or is, including that bird of prey behind you there, Mr. Rusk. Husk, Mr. Husk.
Or Tusk.
I like that. Tusk.
Husk.
I've been called that before too. But yeah, this is a great little outside scape of this planetary base and a Klingon bird of prey flying through.
And you know what? There was a part, JG, in this in your monologue that you gave when you talked about being denied by Kor, where you talked about having to work 5 years on the ship, and it got attacked, and because it got attacked, then you acted accordingly, appropriately, that you were rewarded with the Battlefield Commission. But I mean, how much of that is a parallel to your own kind of struggles working in the business, trying to work your way up, and to become successful and to become recognized for your abilities?
I don't know. I don't know how that got into my my brain and my heart. I really simply maybe you do, you guys do too. I really have a drive to, well, one thing was I wanted to live 1,000. There wasn't enough in life to entertain me. So I got into a situation where I could live 1,000 lives in the space of one. And I wanted to live, I didn't want to be J.G. Hertzler. In fact, I still don't like being. I got a hat on, I got sunglasses on, I got a great mustache on, I have my beard. You can't even see who J.G. Hertzler is there. And that's what I like, because what's underneath is not me. What you're seeing is me. The mask is me. And Galron, Martok, and Galron for that matter, we had wonder. The mask for the Klingon characters was from the top of the highest hair to the lowest toe claw. I mean, we were wearing a complete mask. It's a body mask, and it completely frees you up as an actor to do anything. Yeah. I've written it often that Klingons operate at the extreme of what would be called human behavior. We are only in the extremes. There's no, if there's a subtle movement, it's subtlety at the subtle part of an extreme. Anyway, you asked me a question, Cirroc, and
no, I asked about the working your way up analogy that you gave as Martok, talking about having to work 5 years, doing odd and end jobs on a ship and basically waiting to be recognized. And I feel like a lot of actors go through that same kind of
we do
working your way up, trying to make it to a television show or whatever.
Well, but you got onto a TV show though as a very young man.
Yes,
that was an incredible situation, and very fortunate that you were able to maintain. You're right up there with Ron Moore in terms of being one of the nicest people I've ever met, Cirroc. And just in the interchanges we had on the set and in the conventions and laughing at whatever Aaron was doing at the moment.
Of course.
But so to go as quickly as you got there, and maybe Avery has something to do with this, I don't know, but to get there and still be one of the nicest people I've ever known is an amazing accomplishment. And I don't think I would be the same, because I'd be kicking people's ass if, oh, wait a minute. I told you to wax the damn car.
Are they going to say wax the mustache?
Yeah. And don't forget my mustache. That's extreme. But yes, there is a region educational theater. I didn't do a show until I was a senior in college, and I only got into theater at that point because I quit football when I was a senior. I said, there's got to be other ways to spend my time. I was first team defensive outside linebacker. I was primed to sail into my senior year. But maybe if I were larger, maybe if I were your size, Cirroc, I would have considered it. But I said, I'm just too small. I'm too to really get to where I want to get. And that was probably an excuse on my part. I just wanted to spend my life doing something else besides. Mm-hmm. The only thing I did well in football was to hit people as hard as I could with my forehead. I had no.
Sounds like a Klingon.
I had no. Exactly. I had no defendable, no identifiable athletic skill. I just like to run into people.
So during that football time, were you reading Shakespeare? Were you into the arts? Or did you just transfer over and drop sports and then go into acting and arts?
It was more important to me how I looked as I exited the locker room. There's a right at the exit, right at the big mirror. You look in the mirror, you say, Okay, I got that. Hey, let's go. Got my socks at the right height. Yeah. Hip pads are nice. Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm ready. And then you go out and have to be in a kickoff team, and that scared the hell out of me every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was I saying? No,
Shakespeare.
I was launching myself into a field that never existed with anybody in my realm of either family or friends. Nobody did it. And I never thought
who was the person you were looking at on screen and saying, that's it, that's the guy right there, I want to do something like that?
You know who I most admire, I think? Gregory Peck.
Wow.
He had this incredible depth of soul, and well, he was an incredibly handsome man. I couldn't go there, but he had this incredible, his characters were just painfully honest. And I don't know. I see a little bit of that in Ethan Peck. His voice certainly is there. But also, have you met Ethan, you guys?
No, we haven't, but that's his grandson who actually now plays Spock in Strange New Worlds, which is
that's
amazing.
Gregory Peck's grandson? Yeah. I didn't know that.
Isn't that nuts?
Oh, talking about privilege. He's got a little privilege.
Yeah. But he has some of that wholesomeness, some of that quality that I so admire, and that's really why we moved. Well, I forced us to move out of Los Angeles because I didn't want my daughter. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, how many producers or power players would look me in the eye, shake my hand, and be lying like a toad. You know what it's like. You're nodding your head, Cirroc. You know what?
I've heard it. Yeah.
There's more of that there than I think anywhere. It's everywhere.
Anywhere. It's bullshit is what it is. It's called bullshit.
I didn't want my daughter growing up in a world that held those kind of values. I wanted her to get, so she basically grew up in a small town at Trumansburg, New York. And she's working right now at the library down in Binghamton, the Broome County Library, but she just got a job. She went to Vassar, and she just got a job back at Vassar, working exactly doing what she wants to be doing. And I'm very proud of her, but it has nothing to do with show business. You know, I love show business. I don't like the business part of show business.
You like the show part.
Yes, very much so.
Wow. No, I think you like you like the work, you like the art, the craft, you like the showing up and delivering your lines. What you don't like is the schmoozing, the whole let's do lunch, the whole, oh, I'm doing a movie and you'd be great for the movie and and all that stuff that never pans out.
Right.
Or let me get your number. And you're like, dude, I've given you my number 25 times. You're not
famous
using
last
it.
words. Yeah. Let me get you. Do I have yours?
Yeah, all of that Hollywood kind of schmoozy fake stuff gets really old really fast. And I'm sure, as you also know, as you've seen people change, I've seen guys that were, peers of mine, and they get a movie or they get a job, they become successful in that, and then they become an asshole.
Then you graduate to asshole. Yeah.
Right. Then you move up.
A field commission.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Field commission.
Yeah. So there's a lot of just all of that phony stuff.
It's true. And, people, I had my own sort of semi-theories about, but people basically, you move to law. I worked in theater for at least probably 20 years before I went down and to Los Angeles and began to get a little work there. But theater doesn't pay well enough to be able to earn a living. I didn't feel, I mean, most people, if you were making Patrick Stewart, for instance, was probably making $250 a week, maybe, for 10, 15 years with the Royal Shakespeare Company. You know,
Wow.
and then he gets Star Trek, and he's able to get paid back all those hours that, you know, because it never stops. The work is
right.
And yet you get to say words that Mr. Shakespeare wrote, or somebody awfully like him. You know,
right.
That's the payment, is the doing. I did so much Shakespeare with people, the great actors that you will have never heard of, never hear their name. Al Corbin, Earl Edgerton, people that, in fact, and I'm trying to get him to do a convention because he's still around. I did at the Folger, I was doing Old Aegeus. I played so many old guys. I was usually the old guy whose daughter was older than me, you know. But
how does that work?
It did. It's just white hair, and then it just stuck one day. There was. You remember the guy? I did. He in Midsummer Night's Dream. He was doing Oberon Theseus, a double role. It's often double. Oberon Theseus. I was his understudy. He did not. They extended the show for 2 weeks, but he couldn't do it because he was going somewhere to do something else. He'd already signed a contract. So they let me go on as Oberon Theseus, which was a semi-disaster, but I didn't get the words wrong, got the words right. I just wasn't Mr. Electricity. I was 24 or 5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the guy I was replacing was a guy named Anthony Call, or as we all knew him, and he knew himself, Tony Call. You might recognize that name because he played Lieutenant or Ensign Bailey in the original series. It says, "They're doing a countdown," you know, in Crumbler Maneuver. And he was the one with Howard, Clint Howard. Remember Clint Howard? He was in that episode with Clint Howard. And anyway, because he left the show, I took over as Oberon Theseus. But I called him the other day about before the pandemic. And I said, I got through to him. I said, "Tony, have you ever done a convention?" He said, "No." And I said, "I'd like to?" He said, "Well, yeah, I think I would." And he's probably 80 now. But so my dream is to get Tony Tony up in a convention somewhere where I can also be there, and we could do a little scene from Midsummer Night's Dream.
Wow.
We both did the role.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony is a character. I adore him. But that's where they came. A lot of those characters, I have a picture right there. Let me get it for you.
Sure.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Well, while you're getting that picture, JG, I also have one more question from our good friend, Mr. Anil O Palat, who's well-traveled, goes all over the place, like Turkey and South America and Central America. He asked a really important question that I thought was, very close to what we were already discussing in the first segment. First of all, he says this is his favorite Deep Space Nine episode ever, which is amazing.
Mine too. What's his name? Would you say is Earl?
Anil. And he says, we know how Martok felt at the end of the episode. He softened a bit on Core, but did not join in the song at the end, like you mentioned. How do you think Martok 10 or 20 years later would feel about Core and retell his final battle?
Well, I can tell you how Martok would feel. It's not a suggestion. He would feel exactly the same.
Really?
What I said to the writers, I said, I will take this holding a grudge. This is way beyond a grudge. This is not forgiving a man for denying anything that my father dreamed of. I would have taken. I said it to Ira. I will take this to my grave. I mean, speaking
to Stovokor.
Yeah. Stovokor. Hopefully. But I said, no, it's not forgiveness for me. It's not. I know I can't teach him anything, but I can. I'm not good. Anyway, let me show you two things. Can you see that picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that Crocodile Dundee?
No. That's
I thought the same.
It's Morgan Woodward, who was the Cowboys cowboy. He was on the Wyatt Earp show. He was with Hugh O'Brien. He was Shotgun Gibbs. He literally had. This is an episode of County. The thing that Bruce Campbell did. County Junior, Briscoe County Junior.
Oh, right.
This was a what do you call it? A bounty hunters convention. This was the plot of the story. So the bounty hunters came in from everywhere. He was a bounty hunter, and they hired me to play an actor who was supposed to entertain. I was the entertainment for the bounty hunters. But I loved Shotgun Gibbs because growing up as a kid, this is long before your time. It's the late 50s, early 60s on Wyatt Earp. And so I got my picture taken. He literally had a pair of Longhorns as a hood ornament on his yellow Cadillac convertible.
Wow. Can you hold up that picture one more time?
Yeah.
Let me get this out of
on his yellow convertible Cadillac 1975 with Longhorns.
Yeah.
Wow. That is glorious.
Shotgun
he looks
Gibbs.
The part. So do you, by the way, in there.
He was something. Yeah, that's the the clown in me. But this is another picture I wanted to share because I never have ever. This is my great uncle Fred. Fred was a pitcher for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Boston Braves. And it's funny how he came from a little tiny small town, Port Royal, PA, 1,000 people. And Fred Frankhouse, Freddie, he had a great curveball. But I asked him one time, and I was probably 16 or 17. We were walking down town, literally, Main Street at that point is called Town Lane, under the big old maple trees. It was, it was so our town, you wouldn't believe it, Anyway, I was walking with Fred, and I said, Fred, he was probably in his late 70s, early 80s then. I said, Fred, how old do you feel inside, notwithstanding everything else? Without a hesitation, he said, 17.
Yes, nice.
And that 17 was how old he was when Branch Rickey called him up to be in the big leagues at St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
And but isn't he a handsome guy? I mean, I look at him, I say,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
17. Well, you kind of have a young spirit too, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
I've always seen you just be full of energy, and the way you are now, I don't see any difference. You just always been lighthearted, easygoing, but also when it comes time to roll camera and get the job done, you turn it on as good as anybody I've seen. And I want to commend you for the great performances you've given us. And one of the things I took notice of watching this episode, JG, is, all the actors talk about when they wear all that makeup, how sometimes it's constrictive, and it doesn't allow for full motion, range, and full facial expressions. And I saw you in this episode. Not only you're wearing all that Klingon gear with the big hair and the thing, but you also have one of your eyes patched up, which only gives us one eye to kind of read into your soul and your emotions. So even with only one eye, you were able to really convey for me. I was moved to tears at a certain point in this episode. And I was thinking to myself, wow, JG he is impressing me with this performance and in the story, not just the performance, but the story in general and what it was about, I thought was really touching. And the fact that you're able to get that done, one eye, all that makeup, all of that stuff, and it's your voice, I think, that really carries things so much. Like your voice, JG, it's like, it is that Shakespearean, it is that commanding, it is, it has this presence to it. And it even dwarfs somebody like Worf, who has his own level of presence. But when you come through and you're doing your thing, there seems to be like, okay, we see the hierarchy here. We see who's the boss.
Yeah, that's another show I never got onto. Who's the boss?
There he is. He wants to work with Judith Light.
I worked with Judith Light.
Really? Sorry, I didn't mean to stray us.
Tony
That was one of the first things really, one of the first things. I played a pimp, and I was her pimp in One Life to Live, I think it was. She was Judith Light. Yeah, I got to remind her of that sometime. What was I going to say? I had three things, and I know I said
acting through the patch, moving people to tears, and incredible acting on your part.
That was thank you. That's very kind of you, Cirroc. When they talked to Olivier, gave a tremendous performance. I guess it was either Shylock or Oberon, maybe. I can't remember what the character was, but he got off stage and he was just shaking his head with incomprehension. And somebody came in, he said, "Oh, that was incredible. What an incredible performance tonight." He said, why are you so sad? What's the problem? And Olivier said, "I know it was good. I don't know why."
Wow. Weird.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great saying. That's a great thing to say.
Yeah.
You feel it, but who knows?
No, well, the fact that he doesn't know why, it's like, I don't know how to channel into that again and recreate.
Exactly. It's one of those great aspects of live theater. It only comes once and then it's gone. The next night it's a different animal, completely different animal.
Right. Sometimes it doesn't work and you don't know why too.
Oh, when it doesn't work, you definitely know why.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I sucked, and I know exactly why I sucked.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did Richard II, and I thought I was going to be the world's greatest Shakespearean actor in the world. But I was at Richard II. If you don't know the play, he has a lot of words, but no action. He doesn't do anything. He just talks about doing something for 5 acts. And Richard II, and about the middle of the 5th act, they've been there sitting there a long time. This was at ACT in San Francisco. And I'd be talking, how can I figure out what I've done with my life? I can't remember the words to this, but how do I assess what I've done right and what I've done wrong? I know I'll make my thoughts into people. I'll populate my brain with thoughts, and they can, anyway, about in there, I heard this out in the audience. Huge, it's 2,000 seat theater. And I heard this. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Someone
Click.
taking off their glasses.
People taking off their glasses because I'm not watching any more of this.
Oh no!
You could hear that?
Devastating, because I could hear it. Couldn't see it, but I could hear it. I said, "Oh God."
Oh.
Well, it's better than getting heckled.
That's kind of woof. That's painful. Hey,
Yeah.
JG, actually, we know you have to run in about 30 seconds right now. So we really, really appreciate you taking the time here. And we hope you can come back because we can listen to you tell stories. You are a legendary raconteur, not just a legendary actor. And we'd love to have you back anytime. We absolutely love having you.
More stories than I've remembered today. I mean, I think about it while you're talking. I say, "Oh yeah, I got to comment on that. I got to come. Yeah, I got to. Oh, they'll love that." Gone. By the time it's my turn to talk, it's like, God, never mind.
I guess that just means we have to have you back. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I love talking to you guys. You kidding? It is the best.
We love having you, JG. Absolutely. Whether it's a recorded show like this or whether it's a handshake and a hug at a convention. And you are one of the most genuine people I have personally ever met. And anybody that's listening in on this, I'm sure they can kind of pick up on that. It's not an act. There's a lot of depth to this man. He does love Shakespeare. He does love people, and he does feel very strongly. And we really appreciate your time, JG. We hope to see you again real soon. I want to give a very special thanks, or we do, to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, the aforementioned Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, Carmen, aka Skillet, Timothy Baum, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, John Mann, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Rex A. Wood, Anil O. the aforementioned, Joe Balsarati, Erika Stroem, Mike Gu, DQ, Neal Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kertson, Stephanie Baker, Doctor, Carrie Schwent, Faith Kim, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, who absolutely loves you, by the way, and we do too. JG, thank you so much. We truly appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, guys. It's it's clear. I love talking about myself above all else.
Well, we love talking about you, so that makes two of us.
Yeah.
This episode, hands down, best Klingon episode to me of the series and that I've seen, and I'm glad to have been able to talk to you about it, JG. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
We'll see you all soon, and everybody stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. We'll be talking more about this episode behind JG's back, and so stick around for that. Until then, always remember the seventh rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc, Lofton.
Hello.
Nice. That's the party. Hello.
I'm here.
This is the free for all. Cirroc is playing basketball. You can hear that in the background. We are also joined by Mama Knox, Erika. We've got Anil O in the house. We have Carrie Schwent. Oh, Weird Al Yankovic shirt. Nice. Grandpa One. Awesome. Grandpa One is here, and he is dressed to the nines.
Hello.
Also, Eve England out in Wales, an Abyssinian kiosk shirt. Looks awesome on her. We've got Melissa Longo wearing a seventh rule shirt, which looks awesome on her and everybody ever. Stephanie Baker in Seattle. Looks like she might be wearing the tip of a shirt there. Yep, there it is.
Yo.
Chat pack shirt. Very nice. You can get those at our Teespring store, of course. Just look for seventh rule on Teespring. Goldu Scott is wearing a very one-of-a-kind seventh rule isolinear chip shirt. I almost forgot the word. Goldu Scott. Dr. Marie Segal probably wearing a Captain Og Forever shirt, if I had to guess. Nope, Ferengi Eyes.
Yeah, Ferengi Eyes.
Looks like TJ Jackson-Bey is matching Stephanie Baker here. Wow. Everybody going nuts. And actually, so is Tierney C. Dieckmann. Good job, guys. Mohamed and I didn't get the notice, but Mohamed is here as well. How you doing?
Chat pack day today, huh?
Man, It is big time chat pack representation here. I love it.
Number one, I would like to see you for your legal services after we're done.
Probably not a wise decision.
Okay, never mind.
Still worth it. All right. Well, let's talk about this awesome episode because there's so much to discuss. Melissa Longo, how are you? What did you think of this glorious episode?
I'm doing all right. I really like this episode a lot. There's so much to say about this episode, from the wonderful performance by JG, who you spoke to earlier. Talk about Shakespeare. I mean, his voice is incredible. And the questions that it asks of us, and the age-old story of young versus old, and the older generations trying to stay relevant, and the younger generation, trying to get their 2 cents in and get noticed by to be relevant themselves, to gain experience and all of that jazz. And I just think they did a really good job, and it was great to see Core back.
And you got a cool background of when that hilarious scene when Kira is saying, "Yeah, I'm sure people would love to tell me their problems" to Ezri, right?
Yeah, get out of my office.
Next patient.
You're crazy.
Next
crazy.
patient.
Get out of here.
You're crazy. Yeah, that's the perfect thing to say to somebody. They'll come back for more of that. All right, Mama Knox, how are you? Thanks for staying up. It's super late in the UK. What'd you think?
It is. Yeah, I actually enjoyed this one. I don't normally like the action ones as much. I like storylines, but it had that good storyline, especially with watching Mortok getting Mardy about, getting like a petulant teenager. But I enjoyed the way it touched on dementia, and Alzheimer's disease, things like that. That even the Klingons aren't immune. Did you hear me?
Oh yeah. No, we definitely.
Sorry.
We were all just waiting with bated breath.
But yeah, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah. So you're not much of an action, but there wasn't a ton of action in this one. There was a lot of story, but the action was glorious, I thought.
This is why I enjoy Star Trek, Stargate more than Star Wars. Yeah. All on storyline.
Speaking of Star Wars, #1 Star Wars fan, everybody's like, well, who the hell is he talking about? Anil O Palat is also here, of course. Or was it Stargate?
Say Eve.
Oh, right, she is.
Yeah, no, nothing can take
Stargate.
Yeah, I nothing can take over Deep Space Nine for me.
Nice.
Yeah, this is my favorite episode of Deep Space Nine. I love this. I love everything about this episode except one little nitpick that I have, a tiny one. But just to recap, there's so many things I like about it. But what Worf says in the beginning about Legends, I think, is just really just great writing. It can work for any hero, any legend, anybody who's revered or hated, right? It goes both ways. And then to tie it up at the end where Worf says, does it matter, right? When Martok asks, how did he do it? So I just love that. So I think that's great. And then there's 2 things that I caught, one nitpick and then one where Worf catches the knife, right? When Martok throws it at Core. I was thinking that's almost kind of mystical. Like, it's almost like that's part of the legend. Like, what are the odds? Like, how are you going to catch a knife midair, save his life, and then it goes on. And I was thinking, there's a sort of legendary aspect to how the story plays out, right? What are the odds that, the older Klingon, I can't remember his name, comes
Kor?
in.
Oh,
Not
Darroch.
Kor,
Darroch.
Darroch, yeah. And that that Kor then is able to get the plans and then hypospray Worf, which all seem kind of a stretch, right? Like, somebody sneaking up on Worf and all that. So it just kind of played out a little bit like its own legend. But my
like
nitpick,
mythology,
yeah. So I was wondering if it was almost like it's somebody looking back on it, which is kind of like the question that I had for JG. But yeah, my only nitpick is when they realize that the Dominion is gaining, and the Klingon, she says, they're gaining. And she says it like so concerned. And I was like, that's not very Klingon. She should be like, yeah, they're gaining. I mean, this is bad for us, but we all want to die in battle, so maybe this is not so bad. I don't know. She seemed too concerned to me, but
that's so
a
funny.
Minor nitpick.
I had the exact same thought when I heard that line. I actually paused it and resaid the line how I would have expected it, because usually Klingons, right? They'd be like, they're gaining, or like almost like, all right, the hunt is afoot. All right, here we go. Yeah. Good nitpick, solid nitpick. By the way, Cirroc, Anil reminds us when he said this is his favorite episode ever. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
This is a great episode. I'm going to give it an 8.8.
Wow.
8.8.
Wow.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't know?
7.5.
Goldie Scott's not too sure about that one.
I already looked at it, so I can't say anything.
I think it was, let me check and make sure. I think it was a 7.6, actually.
Oh, I was close.
Yeah, you were very close. 7.6 was what the IMDb weirdos gave it, because come on, guys, go watch it again. It is
7.6. That's low.
right.
Yeah,
Come on.
Too low.
that's too low. Yeah.
Way too
No
low.
respect for the Die Master.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait,
That
I
was all
love
just a
the
bunch
idea
of
that,
youngsters.
I love
Yeah.
the idea that Cirroc is going to go home tonight and be like, let me just rate all these IMDb, like, let me just bump all these IMDb scores. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
You know
Well,
him
that's
well.
my question for you guys. My question is there a better Klingon episode than this one? That's my-
Exactly. That's a great
And
point.
if so, name it.
Anil says no for sure, but anybody else?
That one, I really like the one where TNG, where they go back to like they do the Worf homeworld.
Redemption?
No, is that what it's called? The early one, like the first one. It's I think 2-parter where Picard's the Chudich. I love
Sins
that
of
episode.
the Sins of the Father.
Is that the one where where there's they have to go find Worf's nurse, like baby nurse?
I think
love
so.
that.
I think
That's so
yeah.
world. That and this one I love.
That's the one where Picard is like, you may test that assumption at your
Yeah.
convenience.
Yo, I love that line. If that's the episode.
You were
That's
always fat.
Star Trek for fuck around and find out is what that is.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So
like the
Cirroc,
one-
Anne Marie says that it's second to the one where we get to meet Worf's baby nurse.
Nurse maid, yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
No.
It's really good.
I hasn't seen that one.
It's really good.
What were you gonna say,
Yes.
Melissa?
Oh, I like the one where Jadzia goes on the mission with Worf
Mhm.
Oh,
on the
but,
Klingon ship. Yeah.
Mhm. All right.
Not the one where she dies in the jungle and he has to leave her behind.
Oh no.
I think it's called Soldiers of the Empire, right?
Isn't that
Yeah.
Blood
Yeah.
Oath?
With Martok's first mission back on the
Right.
ship.
And then
Yeah.
Alexander's on the ship too.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one is sons and daughters. I think were there
Oh,
two.
Right. You're right.
Yes.
Yeah. Sons and daughters.
And I love both of those episodes and this one.
But I like Quark's Mohammed's answer too. House of Quark. Any episode with Grilka is a great Klingon episode.
Yep.
In my book.
Very true.
Or any of the Klingon chicks.
Well,
I'm nearly enough for the women.
Eve England out in Wales, thank you as well for staying up. It's late out in the UK. How much did you love this episode and reading the companion 3 times?
That does sound exactly what I probably did. Yeah, I mean, I think I've only seen these once or twice before, so I always sort of feel like I'm looking at them quite fresh when I see them. And I really loved this episode and the way that it was structured all around, what is a legend, what is the impact on a living legend on individuals and and society generally, and how we see that sort of playing out over the episode. As Anil has said, it's just got perfect synergy all the way through, and the different aspects all come through. You're talking about David Crockett, you've got references to the cavalry, you've got that great quote from Shakespeare, and how Core at the end really does fulfill that and goes out in a bang basically. But it doesn't really matter because he's kind of reestablished himself as that legend. When you kind of saw that the dark parts of that episode when the younger crew members are sort of giving him a hard time and treating him as just the man, as Worf said at the start. So I think that is just, I really liked how they brought all of that Shakespearean dialogue and themes to a Star Trek episode. It's just so amazing how the writers do that, and then how the actors really, bring that onto the screen. One thing that the companion did say that was quite interesting, and I was going to ask Cirroc about, was there was apparently a deleted scene where Jake is trying to make a cocktail for Quark in the bar after hours, and they're sort of sitting there. Quark's there apparently wallowing about Ezri because he thinks she's getting back with Worf. And apparently there's a scene where Jake is there making cocktails for them, getting them wrong, and then trying to make it again. And I just wanted to ask Rock whether you remember that, because that sounds like a really cool scene, but they said they just ran out of time and had to take it out, which is why the B story just seems a little bit short compared to the A story. So I thought that sounded like a really fun episode scene for me.
Yeah, I don't remember that scene, filming it, or even the written version of it. But I did feel while I was watching the episode, and then I showed up at the bar, at Brook Bar, I was thinking, this is not cut together right. It feels like there's some missing, wasn't fully fleshed out. It felt like there was something cut out or missing. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, because it definitely sort of had Jake, didn't it? Sort of sat there looking really chilled out at the bar, and you're like, oh, how did this? How do we get here? Because you don't normally see Jake and Quark.
That's what it felt like, because they just had Jake for that one scene, and it almost and I kind of went like, oh, here we go. But then that was kind of all there was. So it makes you wonder, like, if there was more to it. And it sounds like there was. Interesting. Well, Cirroc, we could barely hear you there for a minute, but we got the gist of it. We would have loved to see that deleted scene.
I thought it was weird that when I showed up at the Quark's bar, it just felt out of place. I felt like there was something missing. They didn't give enough backstory to Quark's desire for in this episode.
Yeah. Let's see. Grandpa One dressed up, who's going to be doing Cirroc's taxes soon, and also representing him in court. How do you feel about this episode? You're a former military guy. Did it give you a little nostalgia?
No, for one good reason. I watched the wrong damn episode this afternoon.
Love it.
That'll do it.
I was all prepared for the one y'all did last week.
Any thoughts on last week's?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on last week's episode?
Yeah, the one thing that came to mind when they were doing the horse trading is that, having been in the military, they have a saying: there was only ever one thief in the military. Everybody else was just trying to get their shit back. You're missing something, so you steal it from another unit. They steal it from another unit. And anyway, so I did see, I have seen this episode, but honestly, I sat down and watched the wrong one. So I do remember it, but not enough to really get in depth with it.
Sure. Oh, bummer. I thought about you a lot in this episode because this was Klingon military. So it's like a little different flavor than what we're used to. So I was hopefully next week you can watch this episode and give us your thoughts on that. We'll look forward to that for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for joining us anyway. You look awesome. And whether your hair is back or down, it looks glorious. And a Klingon would be proud.
Yeah.
Okay, Carrie Schwent, wearing her Weird Al Yankovic shirt because she's going to go see Weird Al tonight. Have you watched this episode recently? And if so, how'd you feel about it?
Oh yeah, couple of times. I love the actor that plays Core. My husband just absolutely adores him from the original Battlestar Galactica, and I've seen just enough of it to see his Baltar coming out in Core a couple of times, especially when he's all losing his mind.
Oh, the original? That was the original Gaius Baltar?
He was the original Gaius Baltar.
Wow, didn't know that.
Yeah, just very slightly over the top at times, and just a little bit kind of crazy, but very, very fun guy. Oh yeah, and with him I also wrote, thanks to Garrett Wong for the inspiration, I wrote a haiku for the episode. Dahar Master Core wants one more glorious fight, a good day to die.
Nice.
It's kind of inspired. And the whole Martok being all salty with Core about it, like having this huge grudge. Worf asked Core about it. Core's like, I don't really remember, but it kind of sounds like something I probably would have done, which just amused the heck out of me. And Garrett's just, having brain issues there, but Jake's smirk after Ezri walks away from Quark, he's just laughing his butt off, and I just enjoyed every second of it. Poor Quark.
Check this out, Carrie. For those of us that didn't know about the original Gaius Baltar, check it out. That's him right there. You could definitely recognize that face as Core.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is cool. Good knowledge. A nice haiku, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Stephanie Baker is out in Seattle, waiting patiently and smiling a $1 million smile. How did you feel about this episode if you watched it recently?
I did watch the correct episode today. I was kind of worried when the Zoom started. Did I watch the right one?
It's happened to all of us.
Yes. And I watched it earlier today. And I grew up on TOS episodes. So when Core came on, of course, I've seen him before many times on Deep Space Nine, but every time he comes on, I'm taken back to the Captain Kirk and him being a Klingon and just his voice and his mannerisms. And I love it. I love that they brought him back.
Yeah.
And Klingon episodes, not always my favorite, but this was a great episode. This was just great. But I feel like General Martok, just with his body language, being so upset, like somebody else said, a petulant teenager. That was so true. I just felt like he just did a fantastic job. And I had a nitpick as well about the Klingons on the ship. The female commander interrupts Martok talking to Worf, and she says, quote, "Pardon the interruption, sir," end quote. And I just thought that's just way too polite for Klingons. So it felt like whoever was, even though it's a fantastic Klingon episode, whoever was writing for the Klingons was making them too nice. And
good point. Good nitpick. Good nitpick.
Yeah, but the Klingon makeup, I just want to shout out the Klingon makeup was just great, just stellar. Especially with all the women, the men, the old people. It was just like peak Klingon makeup, in my opinion.
And a ton of them. That must have been a big makeup day. Ton of them. Goldu Scott is also here. He surely watched this episode recently. He's doing an amazing job as an audio engineer for us, as well on the audio podcast. So everybody go check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. Did you think the Klingons were a little polite? It might have been because Kor's last name is Joel.
That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what it was. But I do agree with Stephanie. I'm not very much a huge Klingon episode fan, but this episode was solid all the way around. Everybody was absolutely firing on all cylinders all the way through. And I love that this did show a bit of I don't want to say vulnerable side to Martok, but it gave him, it made me love him even more when I found out that he came from commoner blood and he just worked his way all the way up and pretty much slaughtered his way to where he's at. And he just, I'm here cleaning up. I'm going to take everybody out with a mop or whatever he was doing. Wind up saving the ship, get a battlefield commission. But this was like one of the most quotable episodes that I think I possibly could have ever come across. Just with Kor's about the fruit of life. That was such a savor it because it gets old and bitter. And then down to probably my favorite quote of the whole time was when Jake looks at Quark though, and he goes, "You're delusional." Just that mid laugh. Because it seems so natural. And it made me think at that moment, and then just Quark's looking back at him, it was like, I really do wish that there was some kind of spinoff of Jake and Quark. Because the few episodes ago that we talked about when Jake was trying to learn about the criminal underworld to write better about it, if we could have just got some kind of spinoff or comic or something, because that scene was, it really, it distracted me from, well, not distracted me, but it helped with all this other dark, I know what's going to happen to Kor. I came up on the original series, and, he was such a mustache twirling villain back then. And with that scene in the bar, I wish there was some extra stuff of Jake just destroying everything and making drinks explode everywhere and just making the whole place dirty. It would have been great.
Yeah. Jake Sisko, the struggling writer, is forced to take on a job tending bar with his unruly boss, Quark. TJ Jackson-Bey says, "We need a short trek for that."
Paramount, listen up.
Yeah,
keep
bring
your ears
it
open.
on.
Yeah.
Keep your ears open, Paramount.
I got mine that said short trek.
You got what? Oh, we got you.
No, I thought it was Mohamed that said short trek. No, but it was TJ that asked for a short trek.
Yo, yeah.
I just echoed with a yes.
We want it. Yes.
TJ, what do you got for us? You love this episode, right?
I do love this episode, and I like the way that DS9 portrayed the Klingons, letting us be on their ships, every now and then. I think we got one out of the Next Generation, but we got quite a few out of Deep Space Nine. And I enjoyed learning a little bit more about, Klingon society, and that they have this kind of class division where, Martok didn't just have it handed to him. He actually, got denied and held a grudge. And that's, kind of realistic and reflective of the society that we live in, too. And I thought it was kind of funny that after he tells this whole story, Worf's like, "Yeah, I kind of made him an officer already." And he's just like that, huh? He just walks in and gets it. I thought that was funny. I also enjoyed Cirroc's scene in the bar. If you look at the beginning of that scene, he's just like laid back, he's just
taking it all in.
And he's watching Ezri walk in, and I'm remembering in the past few episodes that he's been like, "Hey, Ezri, how you doing?"
Yes.
And so I'm seeing him, look at her walk in, and I know he's still acting that. So that was funny. And then, having to listen to Quark say, "Oh, she loves me. She loves me." Are you crazy, Quark? That's the one that Kira should have said, "You're crazy. Get out of my office." It was fun watching Kor. Like Stephanie, I also, enjoyed him in the original series. Out of the three that came back from Blood Oath, Kor came back to us a couple of more times. So that was fun. I do wish we could have got a little bit more Kang. kind of a Kang fan, but I like Core too. So Day of the Dove is probably one of my favorite Klingon episodes. It's an original series episode. And that one has Captain Kang in it. And I think, was it Kang that was on Voyager also? So I did get my extra dose of Kang, or was it Koloth? I can't remember. But anywho, love the Klingons.
Kang
like
Nam.
The scene behind you too.
Yeah, you just reminded me that Cirroc and I saw JG's 2 action figures. He had a Kang action figure from the movies, you know, with the shaved head, and also a Martok action figure. And he showed it to us before we hit record, and we totally forgot to bring it up. He had him in a little blood wine mug that he was having to move across like a little spaceship.
So Cirroc's had a basketball court, so this is appropriate. Technical foul.
Dr. Marie Segal, you've never had a technical foul, but how do you feel about this episode?
Technical foul by not remembering to unmute myself. I mean, it's just amazing. Well, first of all, getting to see a Ronald Moore episode the day before For All Mankind comes out for the week, I'm already like super in gear because I'm obsessed with his new show. But yeah, I mean, for all the reasons everybody's already said, I love it. And just the world building in that one, not throwaway, but kind of minor line where Martok talks about how, you know, you needed to be like born into the right family to get into this elite position, and how that wasted like years of his life. It just tells you so much about the Klingon culture, and everybody always like, oh yeah, Star Trek cultures are so like monolithic, but they actually aren't.
Good point.
And I mean, this just does so much to tell you everything you need to know about, you know, like every Klingon basically you've ever seen on screen, like what they had to come up against and how much work they had to do. And then also, like Eve was saying, I really love hearing more about like that, what it's like to be a living legend, which also kind of like, we already saw a little bit with Lee Nellis in the Bajoran Living Legend. So I love that they revisit this a little. So, I mean, Deep Space Nine's amazing. And also, Jake is just adorable in the episode.
Yeah. That was a nice smile you got from Jake right there. Jake, you'll remember, Cirroc, you'll remember Lee Nellis is the guy we called Leonidas back in the day.
Yeah.
We've got our own Leonidas here, and her name is Tierney C. Dieckmann. How are you? Do you love this episode or what?
I am well, and yeah, I definitely love this episode, even way more now upon an analytical rewatch. And of all the Klingon episodes, and yeah, some of them are on the lower end of entertaining, especially some of the TNG, but because DS9 really brought Klingons to the forefront as far as their lore. But
More depth.
this is fantastic. And both TJ and Anne-Marie said 2 things that I have written down here: the portrayal of class division, as well as just the world building without going to the world I don't even have the right words for how perfectly done it is. I mean, it's an ambitious piece of writing to put this much into a singular episode. And there is so much in the dialogue here in every scene. And yeah, the only main nitpick I have would probably be that Jake and Quark scene. And I had put that down as well if nobody else had mentioned it. I'm glad that Eve brought it up with Cirroc, that deleted scene would have filled in that gap between the two of them and just had that extra little bit, again, with more interesting dialogue. There isn't really a B story. Everything's kind of connected in its ways. But yeah, there are subtleties and standouts of what's happening here, and touching on the nobleman and the everyman between Kor and Martok. And it kind of reminds you, just, you don't see how easy it is for 2 people to have completely different views based on one action of Kor striking Martok's name from a list that as an officer, as a nobleman of the court, probably wasn't even really thinking at the time. And we know that Kor was a little big for his britches and didn't think twice about it. A little man from the Ketha lowlands. And here's Martok, and how dare he? I have worked my whole life. I have done this, and I'm going to go, be enslaved by just my lack of privilege. And then he finally gets somewhere by chance, by working his ass off. And his father's not even around to see it. His father has died. So this is another thing that he blames Kor for. And at this point, just after Kor struck his dame, he's not even thought about him again. He's never even met him. And Martok blames him and blames every aspect of his life. He hates him. He is never going to forgive him, regardless of what Kor accomplishes at the end. And you see that in that fabulous last scene with him without the singing, and he's standing there, and that song at the end, and the stoicism on Martok's face, the silence is kind of chilling, because he's still pissed. He knows what a glorious thing he did. The man, the legend, whether he's suffering from dementia, and he already was. I mean, we saw it in that episode with the Sword of Kalis. He was already struggling, and he's trying again. I need that. I need to feel relevant at the end of my life. Worf, please help me. And he does, and he gets that. But Martok is never going to forgive him, but he respects him. Damn it! Look at what he did. Give me that bottle. And it's got to be one of the best, if not the best, Klingon episode. And I had quite a few opposite of nitpicks that I had put down, and just a few little things, like when Kor and Ezri are sitting, and Kor is great with Dax. He doesn't care what Dax looks like. It's Dax. Yeah. He loves Dax. And they're sitting and having their chat, and Worf comes up, and Nicole DeBoer's delivery of just hi with Worf coming in is the cutest freaking thing. I love it. I perk up every time she does it. Of course, the chat with Kira. I love Kira's take on counseling. You're crazy. It's so wrong. It makes me cringe every time. She would be horrendous at mental health. But just that line, next patient. I've thought of that many times for many situations. And then Ezri and Quark's chat. Quark, just, you deserve someone who is willing to win your heart, not just inherit it.
Yeah, great line.
It's a damn good line. That whole interaction redeems a lot of nefarious, to bring that word up, things that Quark has done. And there is nothing lovelier than when someone is genuine with you about their feelings and what's good for you as a person, and not so much, white knighting, now that you're single, even if it means you're in another body. But there's just a lot to love about the episode. And I watched it a couple times just out of sheer enjoyment, which is sometimes hard to do when you're going over these. So yeah, this is one I would recommend to a lot of people. But Klingons, politics, and this is great.
It's great.
No, this is a great one, and it's a really good one for Kor to go out on. Although, actually, one last thing, for anybody who's watched through Enterprise. I don't know if you'd really call it so much of a spoiler, but did Core get cranial reconstruction after the original series?
Oh,
They interpreted
talked
those
about it in
things.
the comic.
I interpreted it that it was delayed, like with the Klingon augment virus thing, it delays the onset of those things.
Delays the onset of the.
Yeah, so they get them instead of like
they get them later in
adults.
Life.
Exactly. That was my interpretation of that.
I've been thinking about that probably too much for a person in the real world, but I didn't want to do too many spoilers. But another conversation. Anyway, next patient.
Yeah, lots of good stuff there. And Quark was amazing. He should definitely be a Klingon, right, Mohamed? Because he has core values. What do you think of this episode?
I enjoyed it overall. I mean, I agree with, I think it was Carrie Schwent who commented about John Colicos and his role in the original Battlestar Galactica. So I loved seeing him there again, as well as in TOS, as TJ and others have highlighted as well. But I mostly agree with Melissa. So going full circle to the start of the comments, Melissa's comments about relevance. Whew, those were like painful to watch. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are in that, in that sort of upper range of age, like, I'm not going to give numbers, but upper range of age, who are struggling to just find a way to be relevant and wondering if their best days are behind them and how are they going to be useful, and have mixed feelings on the ending, in that it was obviously great for the character because that was like the best possible thing, but it was almost too good an ending and doesn't make for a good message in the sense that, because essentially the struggle was just completely obliviated, right? He has to like go out in a blaze of fire and never has to think about the problem again. Whereas most people don't get that luxury of like, oh, I'm going to do this one last thing, because it's going to be like, well, this one last thing, but then like you're living for another however many decades after that, and you have to then keep finding more relevancies where maybe your skills aren't as good as they were before. Maybe you are having greater mental health issues. So, I mean, as a take-home message for the viewer, it wasn't great, but for the character, it was phenomenal. For the story, it was phenomenal. But I didn't walk away thinking like, oh yeah, that's what I'll do when I'm, 85 or whatever. I'm just making up numbers. There wasn't as much of a take home in that sense. So that I felt was maybe a missed opportunity, but story-wise, fantastic. Acting, fantastic. All parts of it, I really, really enjoyed.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think they chose that route, Mohamed, because they wanted just to make it more about the legend and the myth, the mythical kind of aspect of the legend of Core.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah, right.
I do love the legend of Dr. Mohamed Noor, though.
Hell yeah,
My favorite
everybody
legend.
does. Books coming out in the fall, everybody. All right. Speaking of the fall, it's time to close this out. It's time to let Eve and Mama Knox go to bed because it's so late for them. We want to thank Mama Knox, Anil, Melissa, Eve, Stephanie, of course, Carrie, Mohamed, Goldu Scott, Anne-Marie, TJ, Tierney, and Grandpa One looking slick as hell. We will see you all next time. Special thanks to JG Hertzler. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.